Well, my name is Carol McLean, and I am 67. I am a retired lady. I'm a mother and a grandmother and active in my community and in my church. What happened, actually, I blew off my preventive diagnostic exams, you know, the ones that you're supposed to do every year or so. And the doctor was very, said, let's have a mammogram. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll get around to it. I blew it off. And I had really reasons why, but the reality is I could have worked it in to my life. And finally, after another several months went by, the doctor said again, you never did this diagnostic exam. And it's like, oh, okay, I'll go and do this. Well, 2 mammograms later, because I took one, and then they said, oh, there was something not quite right, please come back. So I had 2 mammograms in a short amount of time, and then we need to have you go see this doctor. And I'm going, no one ever said, oh, you have cancer. Let's just go see this doctor. Well, then the doctors, let's do a test. Let's do a needle biopsy. And after a needle biopsy, and still there was suspicious, but until they get the diagnostics back, they don't say anything. And I guess I kept thinking maybe it wasn't really there. But finally she says, you really need to let your children know. You need to let your family know. So, okay, I guess I had to face it then that, it was really happening and I was just ignoring it. This all happened in the summer and fall of 2016. But a needle biopsy and a couple of lumpectomies that I found later were called lumpectomies. Then they kept thinking it was inductal carcinoma. Yeah. That they could it was small. There was no lump, there was no bump, there was none of those things that they tell you to check for. There was none of that, but it was just shadows on the mammogram. If I had not had the mammograms, that would not have been found. And so they kept going in and taking small parts with the lumpectomy, but they could never get what they call clean margins, meaning healthy tissue all the way around the tumor so that they know they have fully contained it. So after 2 lumpectomies, then they said I would have to have a mastectomy. And so I had one side, I was on my left side, and my entire breast was removed. That was a little hard. I've never figured I was too much of a vain person, but when you have part of your body hacked off, it is hard. It is hard. And I think I was prepared for it, but in the end, I don't think you can ever be prepared for it, for something like that. First of all, the diagnosis of cancer, I should back up a little bit because I never figured I was ever a candidate or at risk of breast cancer. There's nobody in my family that has had breast cancer at all. And there's other kinds of cancer that has been in my family, but not breast cancer. So I figure, and that's a genetic, you hear of the genetic markers for this, and I figured, well, I'm not at risk. Well, I found out that many, many women are at risk for breast cancer. And one of the biggest parts that I have found out is obesity. And that is I've struggled with weight my entire life. And that is one of the big risk factors for breast cancer. So yeah, that was hard. Some of that was hard to face. The mastectomy was done in October of 2016, and it was a real, the things that go through your mind is, am I going to be able to take care of myself? How, is this going to hurt? I mean, first of all, is it going to hurt? Because at this point I hadn't even had any pain. There was no lumps, bumps, or pains, but all of a sudden it was, is it going to hurt? I didn't know. And when you ask the doctors, they never have an answer. It seems like their answer always is going to depend upon the next test. Because I had all these tests, one mammogram after another, after needle biopsy, after needle biopsy, after, just one after another. It's like, well, we don't know until the next test. Well, and then is it going to hurt? Well, some people it does, and some people it doesn't. They don't ever give you an answer. I think I did okay. Was it uncomfortable? Yep, it was. But it wasn't as excruciating, painful as I feared it would be. Yes, there was some pain, but it was managed with pain pills. It was managed. I think it was humbling. Almost more than anything was humbling to have my kids and my son. My son came and was a caretaker for part of the time when I come home from the hospital, and he would help clean the bandages and clean the drains, and that was such a humbling thing that my son could be so tender and caring to his mother. And my daughter, who is a caretaker as well, came and helped and drove me to doctor's appointments, and I have a book because I can't remember. When you're going through this, you cannot remember everything the doctor says, so you have to write it down. And I have been in the habit of going to doctor's appointments with my mom and my dad, and I have a book for each of them, so we can always go back and know that and what year she had this happen and what year she had that happen. I handed the book to my daughter, who was going to doctor's appointments. I says, it's your turn now. And it was a brand new book for me. So she is my caretaker and goes to doctor's appointments with me and writes down what the doctor says, because you never remember. You're sitting there trying to think of what to ask when really reality is you're just sitting there kind of stuck in your own world of what's going to happen. How is this going to work? Who's going to take care of me? I live alone. Do I have to go somewhere else? And in the end, I didn't need to do that. I was able to take care of myself. Like I said, right after the surgery, my son came and stayed with me for a time. Then my mother came and stayed with me for a time. But I could, I soon was able to take care of myself. There was probably 8 weeks from surgery until I started chemo. I started chemo in December of 2016, just before Christmas. And again, that started the whole question, am I going to take care of myself? You hear such awful stories about chemo treatments. And I can only speak for myself and how my experience was. But for myself, if I took the anti-nausea drugs at the time that they told me to take them, I was okay. I wasn't feeling really bad. I felt tired, very tired. I have so much admiration for for these women that go through this and then they still have children at home to take care of, and they have work and they're going to work and whatnot. I just had to stay home, and if I didn't feel like getting out of my pajamas that day, I didn't. And I got real good at not messing the house up, so I didn't have to clean it. My emotions were all over the chart, because at the beginning, when you're going through all these tests, it was easy to just ignore them, because they weren't saying you have cancer. When they did say you have cancer, it was kind of like mind-numbing for me. I was like, how can that be? Where did this come from? But then it was, what am I going to do? Am I going to live? Is it going to hurt? I mean, all of these basic things. And then, can I take care of myself? Will I be able to take care of myself? One piece of advice that I was given by my pastor, because I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even tell my family at first. My one good friend, Jan, knew, because I had to have someone drive me to the appointments, because you were under anesthetic for some of these appointments. So she knew something was going on. But I talked to my pastor, and the one thing, and she was very instrumental in listening and compassion. And the one thing she said is to not keep it a secret, which I wouldn't have anyway, I guess. I wouldn't have kept it a secret. And it was at the point that I needed to tell people. But she says it allows other people to be of service to you. And I guess I have done that for a long time. I have been of service. I would be glad to drive people to and from appointments, or cook for them in the kitchen, or be of service to people however I could, take meals, things like that. But I never thought of it as being, by keeping things like that a secret, you're preventing them from being of service to you. And I found that to be a very true thing. I started letting people know. I, at that time, was lay leader at church, so I was in front of the congregation on a weekly basis. And when I told the church body, I can't tell you how many people came forward and said, I had breast cancer a year ago, 5 years ago, one was 17 years ago. She says, these women who come forward said, you're going to be all right. You're going to be all right. If I had tried to keep that all buried and hidden, I would never have had that benefit of those encouraging words to come to me. Then the prayers surrounded me, and I could feel the prayers surrounding me as I went into surgery. And I think that's why I did okay. I gave it up to God, He was going to protect me, and it was going to be okay. And it was okay. And even when we went into the chemo infusions, I felt at peace. I thought, God, it's up to you and these doctors. You've trained these doctors and you've trained these nurses just to heal me. And that's the way I looked at it. I wanted to look at the positive, because it's too easy to dwell on the negatives. I'm hurt. I'm feeling bad. This is happening to me. How can life treat me this way? I don't want to be that kind of person, and I don't believe I am that kind of person. So I spent the entire month in November of that year, every day, posting something on Facebook and going through my own feelings. What are the positives in my life? My children, my mother is still alive, my father is still alive, and how have they benefited? How has that benefited me? And my Bible study ladies, and during this time they're bringing me food, and they're bringing me flowers and candy, and just taking such good care of me. And then family all over the country was praying for me, and like I said, you could just feel those prayers. So I think that time of looking for the positive, looking for the good parts in your life, just kept that encouragement up, and it didn't let you drop down into all the negatives, because it's easy to be negative. You know, this is the bad thing happening. But then I think of the other people that had come forward and said, you're going to be all right. You're going to be all right. It's, you know, you'll take care of yourself. But it's been, some of them, one lady was 17 years since her breast cancer, and she's still great, doing great. Well, I can look at that. I'm 67, and I can look at 20 years. That's my life expectancy. I'm going to be great. And that's the way I looked at it. We just get through it one day at a time. The pain was managed if you took the pills at the right time. The uncomfortableness was managed, and that was a real good thing. I think you had asked me about the emotions as I went through this. When I started chemo, and again, I started it just, this is just another step we're gonna in the process, and the doctors recommended it, and this is what we're gonna do. But then as you're going through it, you're feeling more tired and wimped out. I just would be dragged through a knot sometimes. It just felt so tired. But again, I think I was blessed in that I didn't have to do anything. I had a good, I just sat there and stayed at home if I didn't feel good. And I stayed at home because I didn't want to get the flu.